Chosen one, listen closely, because there are moments in life when a person enters your world, and something inside you immediately feels different. You may not understand why J appeared, why your paths crossed, or why their presence seems to awaken emotions, memories, and questions you thought were already gone. Sometimes a person enters your life not simply to stay, but to reveal something within you that was waiting to be discovered. J may represent a lesson, a mirror, a turning point, or a spiritual awakening that invites you to see yourself differently. Do not rush to define the connection. Allow its meaning to unfold naturally. Chosen one, there is a reason certain people leave a deeper impression on you than others. You can meet countless individuals throughout your lifetime, exchange conversations, share moments, and eventually forget their names, their voices, and the circumstances surrounding your meeting. Yet every once in a while, someone appears and their presence seems to carry a strange weight. You cannot explain it logically. Something about the encounter stays with you. Something about their words continues echoing in your mind. Something about their energy, their timing, or even the circumstances surrounding their arrival makes you pause. And perhaps that is what happened when J entered your life. You may have wondered why this particular person appeared at this particular moment. Maybe you were not searching for anyone. Maybe you were focused on rebuilding yourself, protecting your peace, healing from the past, or simply trying to understand where your life was going. Then suddenly, J appeared and something shifted. It may have been subtle at first, a conversation, a meeting, a message, a coincidence, a shared moment that seemed ordinary to everyone else but somehow felt meaningful to you. Chosen one, do not underestimate the power of timing. Sometimes the significance of a person is not found in how long they remain in your life, but in what their presence awakens within you. A person can arrive for a season and still change the direction of your entire journey. A person can speak only a few words, and yet those words can unlock a thought you have carried silently for years. A person can challenge you without intending to, inspire you without realizing it, or mirror an aspect of yourself you were not ready to acknowledge. That is why you should not become obsessed with forcing a spiritual explanation onto every detail. Instead, become curious about what the experience is teaching you. Ask yourself, what did I feel when J appeared? What part of me became more alive? What fear surfaced? What hope returned? What truth did I suddenly begin questioning? What patterns did I notice in myself? What did this connection reveal about what I truly desire, what I tolerate, and what I am ready to release? These questions may be more important than trying to predict what J will do next. Chosen one, sometimes the spiritual significance of a connection is not that another person has been sent to complete you. You were never incomplete. You were never missing some magical piece that another human being must provide. Your journey is your own. Your identity is your own. Your purpose is your own. If J has entered your life in a meaningful way, perhaps the deeper invitation is to become more conscious of yourself. Maybe J arrived when you were finally becoming strong enough to recognize what you deserve. Maybe their presence exposed an old pattern that you had been repeating without realizing it. Maybe the connection reminded you that your heart is still capable of feeling deeply after a period of emotional exhaustion. Maybe you discovered that you had been hiding behind independence because vulnerability frightened you. And maybe J simply showed you something about yourself. Chosen one, this is where you must become careful. When something feels spiritually significant, the human mind naturally wants answers. It wants certainty. It wants to know. Why this person? Why now? What does it mean? Are they meant for me? Is this destiny? Is this a sign? But spiritual growth does not always come with immediate answers. Sometimes the lesson is learning to sit peacefully inside uncertainty. You do not need to know today whether J will remain in your life tomorrow. You do not need to decode every message, every coincidence, every silence, every glance, or every unexpected encounter. You do not need to turn every event into evidence of a predetermined future. Instead, watch what the connection brings out of you. If it brings clarity, pay attention. If it inspires courage, pay attention. If it teaches patience, pay attention. If it reveals unhealthy attachment, pay attention. If it encourages you to respect yourself more deeply, pay attention. If it reminds you to stop abandoning yourself for the approval of another person, pay even closer attention. Because sometimes the greatest spiritual message is not about the other person at all. It is about you. Chosen one, perhaps J, entered your life at a moment when you were beginning to transition from an old version of yourself into a new one. You may have been quietly changing your values, your priorities, your boundaries, or your understanding of love. You may have reached a point where old connections no longer felt satisfying because you were no longer the person who once accepted them. Then J appeared, and suddenly you found yourself thinking differently. Maybe you began asking bigger questions. Maybe you began noticing your emotional reactions. Maybe you began recognizing how deeply you crave genuine connection rather than superficial attention. Maybe you realized that you had spent too much time proving your worth to people who were never willing to see it. And perhaps that realization was part of the reason this encounter felt so powerful. Chosen one, sometimes another person becomes a mirror. Not because they possess supernatural power over you, but because relationships naturally reveal parts of ourselves that solitude can hide. When you are alone, you can convince yourself that you are completely healed. You can believe that you no longer fear rejection. You can tell yourself that you have moved beyond jealousy, insecurity, impatience, or the need for validation. Then someone enters your life and suddenly those hidden emotions rise to the surface. You may feel excitement. You may feel fear. You may feel anticipation. You may feel uncertainty. You may even feel an unfamiliar vulnerability. Do not immediately judge yourself for feeling these things. Observe them. Your emotions are information, not instructions. They can tell you where your heart is sensitive. They can reveal where healing is still taking place. They can show you where you need stronger boundaries and where you might be ready to open again. J may have awakened something, but you decide what you do with that awakening. Chosen one, never surrender your personal power to the idea that another person is your destiny. A meaningful connection should not require you to abandon your discernment. Spirituality should make you more grounded, not less. It should make you more aware, not more consumed. It should encourage you to respect reality, communication, boundaries, and mutual choice. If J cares about you, their actions will matter. If J respects you, their behavior will matter. If J genuinely wants a place in your life, there will be some form of consistency, honesty, and mutual effort. You do not have to carry an entire relationship through interpretation alone. You do not have to transform silence into a secret message. You do not have to turn distance into proof of hidden feelings. You do not have to chase someone simply because the connection feels intense. Chosen one, intensity and alignment are not always the same thing. Remember that. A connection can feel powerful and still teach you that you need to walk away. A person can awaken your heart and still not be the person who accompanies you into your next chapter. Someone can matter deeply and still have a different path from yours. This does not make the experience meaningless. It makes the experience human. Perhaps J came into your life to remind you that your heart was not broken beyond repair. Perhaps they helped you rediscover laughter. Perhaps they made you question assumptions you had accepted for years. Perhaps they showed you qualities you now realize you want in your relationships. Perhaps they revealed qualities you no longer want to tolerate. Whatever the lesson, receive it. Do not become so focused on keeping the person that you miss the message. Chosen one, there is another possibility you should consider. Maybe J entered your life when you were beginning to understand the difference between being chosen by someone and choosing yourself. That difference can transform everything. For years, you may have waited for people to recognize your value. You may have wondered why certain people did not appreciate you. You may have tried harder, given more, explained yourself more clearly, and remained available longer than you should have. But eventually, something changes. You begin to understand that your worth does not increase when someone chooses you. Your worth was already there. You begin to understand that love should not require constant self-abandonment. You begin to understand that being wanted is beautiful, but being respected is essential. You begin to understand that chemistry is exciting, but compatibility matters. You begin to understand that spiritual language should never be used to excuse unhealthy behavior. And perhaps J became part of that realization. Chosen one, maybe the real sign was not J. Maybe the sign was who you became after J arrived. Think about that. Did you become more courageous? Did you begin speaking your truth? Did you start taking better care of yourself? Did you stop accepting crumbs? Did you become more reflective? Did you begin dreaming again? Did you finally recognize that you deserve relationships where communication flows both ways? If so, then something meaningful has already happened. You do not have to know exactly where the connection leads to appreciate what it has revealed. There is wisdom in allowing a relationship to develop without forcing it into a predetermined story. Chosen one, you are allowed to let J be a person rather than a prophecy. Let them have their own choices. Let them have their own fears. Let them have their own timing. Let them communicate for themselves, and let yourself remain free. If your paths continue together, let that connection be built through honesty rather than fantasy. Let it be strengthened through mutual respect rather than assumptions. Let it grow through actions rather than constant interpretation. And if your paths separate, do not automatically assume that you failed. Some connections are meaningful precisely because they change us. A chapter can be important without becoming the entire book. Chosen one, there may also be a reason you encountered J during a period when you were becoming more spiritually aware. When people become more reflective, they often notice patterns they previously ignored. They begin to recognize recurring behaviors, emotional cycles, and meaningful coincidences. That increased awareness can feel profound. But remember to balance intuition with discernment. Your intuition can tell you to pay attention. It does not always tell you exactly what will happen. That distinction is powerful. You can honor your feelings without treating every feeling as a prediction. You can acknowledge a coincidence without declaring that it guarantees an outcome. You can believe that an encounter has meaning without deciding that another person has no freedom of choice. This is mature spirituality. Chosen one, perhaps J, appeared to challenge the way you understand connection itself. Maybe before this encounter, you believed love had to be dramatic to be real. Maybe you expected constant intensity, emotional highs, uncertainty, and longing. But then you started realizing that genuine connection can also feel peaceful. It can feel safe. It can feel honest. It can feel ordinary in the best possible way. You may have discovered that you do not want someone who keeps you guessing forever. You want someone who can communicate. You want someone who can meet you halfway. You want someone who understands that affection without respect is not enough. And perhaps that is one of the deepest lessons this chapter can offer. Chosen one, do not confuse mystery with depth. A person being difficult to understand does not automatically mean they are spiritually significant. A person being unavailable does not automatically mean the universe is testing you. A relationship being complicated does not automatically mean it is destined. Sometimes complicated simply means complicated. Sometimes distance simply means distance. Sometimes silence simply means silence. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop searching for hidden meanings and allow reality to speak for itself. If J wants to be present, let their presence speak. If J wants to communicate, let their communication speak. If J takes responsibility, let their actions speak. If J disappears, allow that reality to speak too. Chosen one, you do not need to chase answers that another person has the responsibility to communicate. Your peace is valuable. Protect it. At the same time, do not become so guarded that you reject every meaningful possibility. Discernment is not the same as fear. Boundaries are not walls. You can keep your standards while remaining open-hearted. You can care without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. You can hope without becoming dependent on an outcome. You can feel deeply while still thinking clearly. This is the balance you are being invited to learn, and perhaps that balance is why J appeared when they did. Not necessarily because everything about the connection was predetermined, but because you were ready to learn something that you could not have learned in quite the same way before. Chosen one, look at the timing of your life. What were you becoming before J arrived? What were you leaving behind? What were you praying for? What were you afraid of? What were you finally ready to face? Those questions may reveal more than the question, is J my person? Because sometimes the deeper question is, who am I becoming through this experience? Maybe you are becoming someone who no longer begs for attention. Maybe you are becoming someone who communicates directly. Maybe you are becoming someone who trusts themselves. Maybe you are becoming someone who understands that love and self-respect must coexist. Maybe you are becoming someone who does not run from vulnerability, but also does not surrender their identity for intimacy. That transformation matters. Chosen one, perhaps J, was a doorway, but you are the one who must decide where you walk. Do not hand your future to a sign. Do not hand your identity to a connection. Do not hand your peace to uncertainty. Instead, take what is valuable from the experience and carry it forward. If J continues walking beside you, let the journey reveal itself naturally. If J teaches you something and then moves in another direction, carry the wisdom with you. Either way, you can grow. Either way, you can become stronger. Either way, you can remain whole. And there is something else you need to hear, chosen one. You do not need to prove that the connection was spiritual. You do not need everyone around you to understand why it affected you. You do not need to convince anyone that the timing was meaningful. Some experiences are deeply personal. You are allowed to honor what something meant to you without demanding that everyone else interpret it the same way. That is emotional maturity. That is spiritual maturity. And as you continue moving forward, notice whether J brings you closer to the person you want to become or pulls you away from yourself. Notice whether you feel more grounded or constantly anxious. Notice whether you can communicate openly or whether you are always trying to decode. Notice whether there is mutual effort or whether you are carrying the entire emotional weight. Notice whether the connection allows you to grow or makes you abandon your own needs. These observations are more valuable than fantasies about what might happen someday. Chosen one, your life is bigger than one connection. Your purpose is bigger than one person. Your future is bigger than one unanswered question. If J is part of your story, let that story unfold through reality, not fear. And if this person has awakened something within you, do not waste that awakening by becoming obsessed with them. Use it to become more conscious of yourself. Use it to heal. Use it to mature. Use it to strengthen your boundaries. Use it to understand your heart. Use it to recognize what genuine connection means to you. Use it to become the person who no longer needs another human being to confirm that they are worthy of love. Because chosen one, perhaps that is the spiritual shift taking place beneath the surface. Perhaps J did not enter your life to become your answer. Perhaps J entered your life and became a question that forced you to look inward, a question that made you examine your standards. A question that made you confront your fears. A question that made you wonder what kind of love you truly want. A question that made you realize how much you had changed. And sometimes a question can transform you more profoundly than an answer ever could. So do not rush this moment. Let yourself observe. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself learn. Let G be who they are, while you continue becoming who you are meant to become. Do not force a door open. Do not chase what continually runs from you. Do not abandon your intuition, but do not abandon your reason either. Walk with both. And as you do, you may begin noticing something extraordinary. The more you choose yourself, the clearer every relationship becomes. People who belong in your life will not require you to destroy yourself to keep them. People who genuinely value you will not need you to constantly prove your worth. People who respect you will care about how their actions affect you. And people who cannot meet you where you are may still have a meaningful place in your story, even if that place is not permanent. Chosen one, this is why you must remain patient with the chapter involving J. You are not required to know the ending while you are still living the middle. You are not required to predict tomorrow. You are only required to remain honest today. Let today show you what today has to show you. Let actions reveal intentions. Let communication reveal understanding. Let consistency reveal commitment. Let time reveal what emotion cannot. And above all, let your own growth reveal what this experience was truly asking of you. Because there may come a moment when you look back and realize that the most important thing about J was never whether they stayed or left. It was that their arrival caused you to see yourself with new eyes. It was that something in you awakened. It was that you began questioning old beliefs. It was that you stopped settling for relationships that made you feel invisible. It was that you learned to distinguish longing from love, intensity from compatibility, and mystery from genuine depth. And once you understand that, chosen one, you will begin to recognize why some people enter our lives at precisely the moments when we are changing, why certain encounters remain in our memories, why one conversation can make us rethink an entire season of our lives, why someone can arrive unexpectedly and cause us to confront truths we had avoided, and why sometimes the person we thought we were supposed to understand becomes the experience through which we finally begin to understand ourselves, chosen one. And when that realization begins to settle into your spirit, you may notice that the meaning of J starts changing. At first, you may have been focused on the person. You may have wondered what they were thinking, what they were feeling, why they behaved a certain way, why they appeared when they did, and whether the connection carried some deeper purpose. But as you grow, your attention begins shifting away from trying to understand another person and toward understanding what their presence awakened inside you. That is where the deeper transformation begins. Chosen one, there are people who enter your life and simply pass through it. You remember them for a little while, then life becomes busy, circumstances change, and their memory becomes less important. But there are other people whose arrival seems to touch a hidden place within you. They make you question things. They make you feel things you had forgotten how to feel. They make you examine parts of yourself that you had placed behind emotional walls. J may have become connected to one of those moments in your life. Perhaps you were becoming more independent when this person appeared. Perhaps you had convinced yourself that you no longer needed anyone. Perhaps you had become comfortable with emotional distance because distance felt safer than disappointment. Then J entered your world, and suddenly your carefully controlled emotions were not as controlled anymore. You began feeling. You began remembering. You began wondering. You began imagining possibilities, and perhaps that frightened you. Chosen one, sometimes the people who awaken our hearts also awaken our fears. When you have been disappointed before, opening yourself to someone new can feel like standing at the edge of something beautiful while remembering how deeply you have fallen in the past. You may want closeness, but you may also fear it. You may want honesty, but you may fear what honesty could reveal. You may want someone to stay, but you may be afraid of becoming attached. This inner conflict is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that your heart remembers, and healing does not mean that you never become afraid again. Healing means that fear no longer makes every decision for you. Chosen one, perhaps, J, entered your life during a period when you were learning that vulnerability is not weakness. You do not have to reveal everything immediately. You do not have to trust everyone blindly. But you also do not have to remain emotionally unavailable simply because someone once hurt you. There is a difference between protecting yourself and imprisoning yourself. Protection says, I will move carefully. Fear says, we'll never move. Protection says, I will observe actions. A fear says, I will assume everyone will hurt me. Protection creates wisdom. Fear creates isolation. And perhaps this connection is teaching you how to tell the difference. Chosen one, pay attention to the moments when J makes you feel most like yourself. Those moments matter. If you can laugh naturally, speak honestly, express your thoughts without constantly worrying about judgment, and exist without pretending to be someone else, There may be something worth understanding there. But also pay attention to the opposite. If you find yourself constantly performing for approval, changing your personality to be accepted, suppressing your needs, or becoming someone you do not recognize, that is important information too. A spiritual connection should not require the destruction of your authentic self. You were not born to become smaller so someone else can feel comfortable around you. You were not born to spend your life wondering whether you are enough. You were not born to chase a person who refuses to meet you halfway. Chosen one, your heart deserves reciprocity, and perhaps that is one of the greatest lessons hidden inside the appearance of Jay. Maybe you have always been a giver. Maybe you naturally care deeply. Maybe when you love someone, you invest your attention, your time, your energy, your patience, and your emotional presence. But there comes a point when giving without receiving begins to drain the soul. You cannot continuously pour from an empty vessel. You cannot keep explaining your worth to someone who has decided not to recognize it. You cannot build a mutual relationship alone. There must be movement from both sides. There must be effort from both sides. There must be honesty from both sides. There must be a willingness to understand from both sides. And chosen one, if Jay is teaching you anything, perhaps it is this: stop measuring your value by how much someone else is willing to give you. Someone else's capacity is not a measurement of your worth. Someone else's emotional availability is not proof of your lovability. Someone else's confusion is not evidence that you are unworthy of clarity. Someone else's inability to commit does not mean you are impossible to love. You must learn to separate their limitations from your identity. Chosen one, maybe, Jay, has also appeared as a mirror for your relationship with patience. You may want answers immediately. You may want to know what everything means. You may want to know where the relationship is going. You may want to understand every change in tone, every unexpected interaction, every period of silence, every moment of closeness. But sometimes life refuses to give you the complete picture immediately, and that can be frustrating. Yet patience can reveal things that pressure hides. When you stop forcing an outcome, you begin observing what happens naturally. When you stop chasing explanations, patterns become clearer. When you stop trying to control another person's behavior, you can finally see their choices for what they are. This is powerful, because you cannot control whether someone chooses you. You can control whether you continue choosing yourself. Chosen one, there may be moments when Jay seems distant, and your mind immediately begins creating stories. Maybe you will wonder whether you did something wrong. Maybe you will wonder whether their feelings changed. Maybe you will wonder whether there is someone else. Maybe you will wonder whether the connection was ever real. But before believing every story your mind creates, pause. Return to what you actually know. What has been communicated? What has been demonstrated? What has been consistent? What has been inconsistent? What are you assuming? What are you imagining? What are you afraid is true? And what is actually known? That distinction can save you from unnecessary emotional suffering. Chosen one, intuition is often quiet. Fear is often loud. Fear wants immediate answers. Fear wants certainty. Fear wants to solve every mystery. Intuition can wait. Intuition observes. Intuition does not always demand that you act immediately. So when you feel overwhelmed by thoughts about Jay, step back from the noise and listen to what remains when the anxiety becomes quiet. That quiet space may tell you more than endless analysis ever could. Chosen one, perhaps Jay, has also entered your life to challenge your understanding of timing. There are seasons when we desperately want something, yet we are not ready to handle it. There are people we meet too early. There are opportunities we encounter before we have developed the maturity to recognize them. There are relationships that arrive when two people care about each other, but cannot yet meet each other in the way they need. Timing can be complicated, and because of that, do not assume that every meaningful connection must immediately become a permanent relationship. Sometimes people meet while they are still becoming themselves. Sometimes two people need to grow separately before they can understand what they actually want. Sometimes they grow in different directions. And sometimes the timing reveals that their paths were meant to cross rather than permanently merge. That does not make the encounter meaningless. Chosen one, imagine standing at a crossroads and meeting someone traveling another road. For a while, your paths run alongside each other. You share stories. You encourage one another. You learn from one another. You may even believe that you will continue together forever. But eventually, the roads may separate. Would that mean the journey was pointless? No. The person may have helped you survive a particular stretch of the road. They may have shown you something about yourself. They may have helped you recognize where you were going. They may have encouraged you to keep moving. And perhaps that is enough. Chosen one, you must allow meaning to exist without possession. You can appreciate someone without needing to own their future. You can care about someone without demanding that they become yours. You can be grateful for an encounter without turning it into an obsession. That is freedom. And freedom is important because love without freedom becomes fear. If you constantly fear losing someone, you may begin controlling them. You may begin monitoring their behavior. You may begin looking for hidden meanings. You may begin abandoning your own needs just to keep them close. But genuine connection allows two people to remain individuals while choosing to share part of their lives. Chosen one, perhaps J, is teaching you how to remain yourself while caring deeply. That lesson is priceless, because there is a difference between saying, "I love being with you," and saying, "I cannot exist without you." The first is connection. The second can become dependence. You were a whole person before, J. You remain a whole person with J, and you will remain a whole person regardless of what happens next. Remember that when emotions become intense, chosen one, you may also have noticed that certain qualities in J seem to reflect qualities you are developing within yourself. Maybe they are confident in ways you are learning to become confident. Maybe they are independent in ways you are learning to become independent. Maybe they communicate directly in ways you are learning to communicate. Maybe they are emotionally expressive in ways you once struggled to be. Sometimes we are drawn to qualities that our own spirit is beginning to develop. The attraction may therefore be partly about recognition. You see something in another person that reminds you of something within yourself that wants to emerge. That is why some people feel strangely familiar, not necessarily because they are destined to remain forever, but because something about their presence resonates with a part of you that is becoming more visible. Chosen one, think about what J represents to you. Not who they are in an idealized story, not who you hope they will become, not who you imagine they could be, but what qualities do you associate with them? What do they symbolize in your mind? Freedom, adventure, confidence, mystery, security, passion, healing, possibility. Once you identify that, you may discover that you can cultivate those qualities within yourself instead of depending on another person to embody them for you. If J represents confidence, become more confident. If J represents courage, become more courageous. If J represents emotional honesty, become more emotionally honest. If J represents freedom, create more freedom in your own life. Let the encounter become fuel for your growth. Chosen one, that is how you transform attachment into wisdom. You stop asking, "How do I make this person stay?" And you begin asking, "What is this experience teaching me?" That question changes everything, because one question puts your power outside yourself. The other brings your power back home. Chosen one, perhaps there is also something you need to forgive yourself for. Maybe you became emotionally attached faster than you expected. Maybe you read too much into certain moments. Maybe you allowed yourself to dream. Maybe you became vulnerable after promising yourself that you would never do so again. Do not punish yourself for having a heart. You are human. You will feel. You will hope. You will sometimes misunderstand. You will sometimes make emotional decisions. Growth is not the absence of mistakes. Growth is learning from them without turning them into reasons to hate yourself. If J awakened emotions you were not prepared for, give yourself compassion. If you became confused, give yourself patience. If you became attached, do not shame yourself. Instead, ask what the attachment is trying to teach you. Maybe you are craving reassurance. Maybe you are craving stability. Maybe you are craving recognition. Maybe you are craving the feeling of being deeply understood. Those needs are not shameful, but you must learn healthy ways to meet them. Chosen one, no human being should become your only source of emotional security. You need your own foundation, your own routines, your own friendships, your own goals, your own interests, your own sense of identity, your own relationship with yourself. That way, when someone enters your life, they add to your world rather than becoming the entire world. And perhaps J is challenging you to build that foundation. Maybe the connection became emotionally intense because other parts of your life had become quiet. Maybe you placed too much attention on one person because you needed something exciting to focus on. Maybe you were searching for meaning and found it through another person's presence. But chosen one, meaning can be created in many places. Your work can have meaning. Your creativity can have meaning. Your friendships can have meaning. Your personal growth can have meaning. Your service to others can have meaning. Your solitude can have meaning. Your dreams can have meaning. Your future can have meaning. Do not shrink your entire spiritual journey into one relationship. Chosen one, perhaps J, appeared to remind you that life is still capable of surprising you. Maybe you had become convinced that nothing new could happen. Maybe you thought your emotional life was finished. Maybe you believed you had already experienced every kind of connection you were going to experience. Then suddenly, this person appeared, and something inside you whispered, "There is still more." That can be powerful. Sometimes the greatest gift another person gives us is not themselves. It is the reminder that our story is still unfolding. You are not finished. Your life is not fixed. Your future is not determined by your past. You can still meet people who challenge you. You can still discover new parts of yourself. You can still change your mind. You can still become softer without becoming weak. You can still become stronger without becoming cold. You can still love after disappointment. You can still trust after betrayal, carefully and wisely. You can still dream after failure. Chosen one, perhaps that is why this connection feels so significant. It arrived at a moment when you needed evidence that life could still surprise you. And now you must decide what you will do with that surprise. Will you become consumed by it? Or will you allow it to awaken you? There is a difference. Being consumed means your attention becomes trapped around another person. Being awakened means your attention expands toward your own life. Being consumed makes you ask what they are doing. Being awakened makes you ask what you are becoming. Being consumed makes you wait for their next move. Being awakened makes you continue moving toward your own purpose. Being consumed makes you fear losing them. Being awakened makes you realize you cannot lose yourself. Chosen one, choose awakening. Even if J remains in your life, choose awakening. Even if the relationship grows, choose awakening. Even if the connection becomes deeper, choose awakening. Because the healthiest relationship is not one where two people disappear into each other. It is one where two whole people choose to walk together. Chosen one, perhaps you have also been noticing synchronicities surrounding the letter J. Maybe you see the letter unexpectedly. Maybe you hear the name repeatedly. Maybe certain dates, places, songs, numbers, or phrases seem connected to this person. These moments can feel meaningful, and you are allowed to notice them. But do not allow coincidences to replace communication. A repeated symbol can invite reflection, but it cannot make a decision for you. If you see J everywhere, ask what emotion arises when you notice it. Does it make you hopeful? Does it make you anxious? Does it make you nostalgic? Does it make you peaceful? Your reaction may reveal more than the symbol itself, because symbols can be interpreted in countless ways. Your inner response can help you understand what is happening inside you. Chosen one, perhaps the letter J has become a reminder of a chapter rather than a guarantee of a destination. Maybe every time you see it, you remember the version of yourself who existed before this experience, and maybe you also remember how much you have changed since then. That is meaningful. You can allow the symbol to remind you of growth rather than using it to predict the future. You can say, "This reminds me of what I learned," instead of saying, "This proves what will happen." That small shift protects your peace. Chosen one, there is also something sacred about not knowing. We live in a world that constantly encourages immediate answers. We want instant communication, instant information, instant validation, instant clarity. But the soul often develops slowly. Some lessons require time. Some relationships reveal their meaning gradually. Some truths cannot be understood while you are still emotionally inside the experience. That is why you may someday look back at J and understand things you cannot understand today. Do not demand tomorrow's wisdom from today's heart. Let time participate in the lesson. Chosen one, perhaps right now you are still in the middle of the story. You do not know what happens next. You do not know whether J will move closer. You do not know whether circumstances will change. You do not know whether another conversation will happen. You do not know whether this becomes a relationship, a friendship, a lesson, a temporary chapter, or something completely different. And that uncertainty does not need to destroy your peace. You can live fully while the answer is still unknown. You can wake up and pursue your goals. You can laugh with your people. You can work on yourself. You can create. You can travel. You can rest. You can dream. You can continue becoming. The unanswered question does not have to become the center of your existence. Chosen one, remember that. An unanswered question is not an emergency. Let that truth settle deeply within you. You do not have to solve every emotional mystery tonight. You do not have to know what someone feels before you know what you feel. You do not have to predict someone's next move before deciding your own. Your next step belongs to you. And perhaps your next step is simply to return to yourself. Chosen one, if you feel that J awakened something spiritually important, honor the experience by becoming more intentional. Be more honest with yourself. Be more careful with your energy. Be more selective about who receives access to your heart. Be more willing to communicate clearly. Be more willing to walk away from disrespect. Be more willing to remain when something is healthy. Be more willing to accept reality even when reality is different from what you hoped. This is where spiritual maturity begins to move beyond imagination and into everyday life. Because spirituality is not only about signs, it is also about choices. It is about how you speak, how you love, how you respond, how you forgive, how you establish boundaries, how you handle disappointment, how you treat people when they cannot give you what you want, how you treat yourself when you are rejected, how you behave when you are uncertain, how you continue living when you do not have all the answers. Chosen one, perhaps J, has entered your life as part of this larger education, an education in love, an education in patience, an education in self-respect, an education in discernment, an education in emotional freedom, an education in trusting yourself. And maybe the most important lesson is that you do not need to know whether someone was sent into your life to recognize that the experience can still teach you. You can leave the mystery where it belongs. You can let life remain mysterious. You can let another person remain human. And you can remain responsible for your own heart. Chosen one, if the connection with J is genuine and healthy. It will have room for reality. It will survive honest communication. It will not require endless guessing. It will not depend on you ignoring your boundaries. It will not require you to become someone else. It will not demand that you sacrifice your peace to keep it alive. A healthy connection can handle truth. It can handle questions. It can handle boundaries. It can handle two people having independent lives. And if something cannot survive those things, perhaps what you were holding was not the connection itself, but the idea of it. That realization may hurt, but clarity is often kinder than illusion. Chosen one, perhaps this is why you were drawn to J in the first place. Maybe something in you recognized a possibility. But a possibility is not a promise. A feeling is not a contract. A coincidence is not a command. A spiritual impression is not a substitute for mutual choice. You must let reality complete the picture. And as you do, you may discover that the connection becomes either clearer or quieter. Both outcomes can teach you. If it becomes clearer, you will know what is actually there. If it becomes quieter, you will learn how to release what you cannot control. Either way, you are growing. Chosen one, never measure the spiritual value of a person by how much pain they caused you. Pain does not automatically equal destiny. Difficulty does not automatically equal depth. Obsession does not automatically equal love. Sometimes what hurts us is simply something that needs to be released. And sometimes what challenges us is something that helps us grow. Your responsibility is not to romanticize the pain. Your responsibility is to understand the lesson. If J brought confusion, learn about clarity. If J brought longing, learn about emotional balance. If J brought vulnerability, learn about healthy openness. If J brought disappointment, learn about resilience. If J brought joy, learn how to appreciate joy without trying to possess it. If J brought hope, learn how to carry hope without making it dependent on one person. This is how you transform every experience into wisdom. Chosen one, you may also be entering a season where you are becoming less interested in superficial relationships. You may no longer have the patience for conversations that go nowhere. You may no longer want people who appear only when it is convenient. You may no longer want relationships built entirely on attraction but lacking emotional responsibility. Something in you may be demanding depth, not drama. Depth. There is a difference. Drama keeps you emotionally activated. Depth makes you emotionally understood. Drama makes you constantly question. Depth allows honest conversation. Drama keeps you chasing. Depth creates mutual movement. Drama consumes energy. Depth can create peace. Perhaps J helped you recognize that difference. And once you recognize it, you cannot easily return to the old version of yourself. Chosen one, you are beginning to understand that your standards are not unreasonable simply because someone cannot meet them. Wanting honesty is not too much. Wanting respect is not too much. Wanting consistency is not too much. Wanting communication is not too much. Wanting emotional safety is not too much. Wanting someone who chooses you freely, rather than someone you have to convince, is not too much. The right people will not make you feel ashamed for having healthy needs. And if J has made you more aware of those needs, then the experience has already served an important purpose. Chosen one, perhaps there is a new version of you emerging now. A version that does not chase. A version that does not beg. A version that does not over-explain. A version that does not compete. A version that does not interpret every silence as rejection. A version that does not interpret every coincidence as destiny. A version that simply observes, chooses, communicates, and continues living. That version of you is powerful. And perhaps J entered your life at exactly the moment when that version of you was ready to emerge. You may not have recognized it immediately. You may have thought the story was about them, but slowly, you are discovering that the story is also about you. It is about your emotional evolution. It is about your ability to remain open without becoming dependent. It is about your ability to remain discerning without becoming cynical. It is about your ability to love without abandoning yourself. It is about your ability to walk away when necessary without believing that walking away means you failed. Chosen one. Maybe J has shown you that your heart is stronger than you realized. You thought you needed certainty to move forward, but now you are learning to move forward without certainty. You thought you needed someone's response to know your value, but now you are learning that your value exists before the response. You thought you needed another person to validate your intuition, but now you are learning to listen to yourself while remaining grounded in reality. And that is a profound shift. Chosen one, keep watching your life beyond this connection. Notice what begins changing. Notice the opportunities that appear. Notice the people you meet. Notice the confidence growing inside you. Notice the boundaries becoming easier to enforce. Notice the dreams returning. Notice the parts of yourself that you stopped expressing. Notice how your definition of love evolves. Because sometimes one person enters your life and opens a door to an entire season of transformation. You may think the door leads only to them, but perhaps it leads somewhere much larger. Perhaps it leads to you. And as you step through that door, You may begin discovering that what you were seeking outside yourself was also waiting inside you. The confidence, the courage, the peace, the clarity, the self-respect, the ability to choose, the ability to let go, the ability to receive, the ability to love without losing yourself. Chosen one. Perhaps, J, was never meant to become the center of your universe. Perhaps the encounter was meant to remind you that your universe was much larger than you remembered. Perhaps you had become so focused on surviving the past that you stopped imagining the future. Then someone appeared, and suddenly you remembered that there are still experiences you have not lived, emotions you have not explored, conversations you have not had, places you have not seen, and versions of yourself you have not yet met. That realization alone can change the direction of a life. So continue walking, continue observing, continue growing, continue allowing the truth to reveal itself through time and action. And if J remains part of your path, let the connection develop through mutual choice, honesty, patience, and reality. If the connection changes, let yourself change with it. If circumstances shift, do not immediately assume that everything has been lost. Sometimes a change in circumstances creates space for a deeper understanding. Sometimes distance reveals what closeness concealed. Sometimes silence gives you an opportunity to hear your own thoughts. Sometimes waiting teaches you whether you actually want something, or whether you simply wanted the feeling of being wanted. And sometimes the most unexpected thing happens. You realize that the person you were waiting for was never the final destination, but the moment of awakening that helped you begin walking toward a life you had almost forgotten to imagine. Chosen one, stay present in that possibility. Not because you must reject, J. Not because you must force yourself to stop caring, but because you deserve to remain open to everything life can become. Your story is still moving. Your heart is still learning. Your identity is still expanding. And the meaning of this encounter may continue revealing itself in ways you cannot yet see. So do not rush the lesson. Do not rush the relationship. Do not rush the answer. Let each day reveal what it has been carrying beneath the surface. Let your discernment become stronger. Let your self-respect become deeper. Let your heart become wiser without becoming harder. Let your intuition become quieter and clearer. Let your actions become more intentional. And above all, keep choosing the version of yourself who can love deeply, while still standing firmly within their own life. Because when you reach that place, something changes inside you. You stop asking whether another person is your destiny, and begin asking whether the life you are creating is aligned with your deepest values. You stop asking whether someone will choose you and begin asking whether their presence is worthy of the space you are offering. You stop chasing signs and begin noticing patterns. You stop demanding certainty and begin developing discernment. You stop trying to control outcomes and begin trusting yourself to respond to whatever reality reveals. And chosen one, that is where the story of J may become much bigger than J itself. Because perhaps the real spiritual awakening was not about discovering who this person was supposed to be in your life. Perhaps it was about discovering who you were becoming because they entered it. Chosen one. Perhaps this is the moment when you finally understand that not every meaningful connection arrives with a permanent promise. Some arrive with a message. Some arrive with a mirror. Some arrive to awaken a part of you that had been sleeping beneath disappointment, fear, and old memories. And perhaps J entered your life during a season when your heart needed to remember something important. You are still capable of feeling, still capable of growing, still capable of opening your heart without losing yourself. Maybe you spent a long time believing that your past had already written the rest of your story. Maybe you thought you knew what love would look like, what people would do, how relationships would end, and what you could expect from others. Then J appeared and interrupted those expectations. Suddenly, you were asking different questions. Suddenly, you were noticing emotions that you thought had disappeared. Suddenly, the future did not look quite as predictable as it once did. Chosen one. Sometimes that is how awakening begins. It begins with interruption. Something enters your ordinary routine and causes you to look again at your life. It causes you to question what you thought you knew. It creates a pause between who you were and who you are becoming. And perhaps that pause is sacred. Do not be afraid of it. You do not need to fill every empty space with an answer. You do not need to immediately decide what J means. Let the experience breathe. Let time reveal what emotion cannot reveal. Let actions speak louder than assumptions. Let reality remain your guide. Because if this connection is meant to remain, you will not have to destroy yourself to keep it alive. If it is meant to teach you, the lesson will remain even after circumstances change. And if it is meant to awaken you, then the most important thing is what you do after you awaken. Chosen one, take the courage you discovered through this experience and carry it forward. Take the honesty, take the wisdom, take the lessons, take the renewed understanding of what your heart needs. But leave behind the fear that tells you that you must control every outcome. You cannot control another person's heart. You cannot control their decisions. You cannot control their timing. You cannot control whether they understand what you feel. But you can control whether you continue respecting yourself. You can control whether you communicate honestly. You can control whether you maintain your boundaries. You can control whether you continue pursuing your purpose. And you can control whether you allow uncertainty to steal the present moment from you. Chosen one, perhaps, J, was the person who reminded you that your heart was not dead. Perhaps you needed that reminder more than you realized. Perhaps after everything you experienced, you had become emotionally cautious, and this encounter showed you that there was still warmth inside you. Do not mistake that awakening for weakness. The ability to feel deeply is not weakness. The ability to care is not weakness. The ability to love is not weakness. The ability to walk away when something is unhealthy is not weakness either. True strength is being able to hold love and wisdom in the same hands. You can care and still have boundaries. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can appreciate someone and still choose yourself. You can believe an encounter was meaningful without believing that you must force its outcome. Chosen one, this is the balance you have been learning, and perhaps one day, when you look back, you will realize that J was not only a person who entered your life. J became a chapter in your transformation, a chapter that taught you what you desire, a chapter that revealed what you fear, a chapter that exposed what you still needed to heal, a chapter that showed you what you will no longer accept, a chapter that reminded you that your heart can still surprise you. And perhaps the greatest lesson was that you do not have to know whether someone is meant to stay forever in order to appreciate the impact they had on your journey. Some people leave footprints without building homes in our lives. Some people open doors without walking through them with us. Some people light a path for a short distance and then continue along their own road. And sometimes, chosen one, that is enough. Because life is not measured only by permanence. It is measured by growth. It is measured by meaning. It is measured by the moments that change the way you see yourself and the world around you. So if J has changed you, acknowledge it. If J has awakened something in you, honor it. If J has taught you something, carry it. But do not forget yourself in the process. Your journey continues beyond this connection. Your purpose continues beyond this chapter. Your future continues beyond this unanswered question. Chosen one, there will come a day when you no longer need to analyze every detail. You will not need to ask why the meeting happened. You will not need to wonder whether every coincidence was a sign. You will simply know what you learned. You will understand what you became, and you may look back with gratitude, not necessarily because everything happened exactly as you wanted, but because everything taught you something you needed to understand. Maybe J taught you patience. Maybe J taught you boundaries. Maybe J taught you vulnerability. Maybe J taught you that attraction is not enough. Maybe J taught you that communication matters. Maybe J taught you that you deserve consistency. Maybe J taught you that you can survive uncertainty. Whatever the lesson is, do not waste it. Let it become part of the person you are becoming. Chosen one, your life is too precious to remain trapped inside one unanswered question. Keep living, keep creating, keep becoming, keep meeting the world with curiosity. Keep your heart open, but keep your discernment awake. And if J is still walking beside you, let the connection prove itself through time, honesty, consistency, and mutual choice. Do not force it. Do not fear it. Do not worship it. Simply allow it to be what it truly is, and if the path eventually turns in another direction, remember that the meaning does not disappear simply because the circumstances changed. You can release someone without erasing what you learned from them. You can close a chapter without declaring the entire story meaningless. You can move forward without becoming bitter. And you can continue believing in love without needing one particular person to prove that love exists. Chosen one, perhaps the deepest message of all, is this: the person who entered your life did not create your light. They revealed it. They did not create your strength. They helped you notice it. They did not create your worth. They reminded you to recognize it. And they did not create your future. You still have the power to create that. So stand firmly in who you are. Let your heart remain open. Let your mind remain clear. Let your standards remain strong. Let your intuition remain grounded. Let your life continue expanding. And when you think about J, do not only ask what this person means to your future. Ask what their arrival has already taught you about yourself. Because that answer may be more powerful than any prediction. Chosen one, you were never meant to spend your entire life waiting for a sign that tells you who you are. You are the one who decides what kind of life you will build. You are the one who chooses what kind of love you will accept. You are the one who decides what boundaries protect your peace. You are the one who determines whether a lesson becomes wisdom. And perhaps this encounter was simply one more piece of the larger journey that is leading you toward a version of yourself who no longer needs to chase what is uncertain, because you have learned to trust what is real. So let J be whatever this chapter truly needs to be. Let the truth reveal itself. Let time do its work. Let life unfold without forcing the ending. And while the story continues, keep walking with your head high, your heart wise, and your spirit grounded. Because chosen one, the greatest spiritual sign may not be the arrival of another person at all. It may be the moment you realize that you have finally returned to yourself. And when you return to yourself, you stop begging the universe for proof. You stop chasing what is unclear. You stop measuring your worth through another person's attention. You stop fearing every goodbye. You begin to understand that whatever is genuinely aligned with your life will not require you to betray your own soul to keep it. You begin to trust that what leaves can still teach you, what stays can still challenge you, and what comes next can still surprise you. And perhaps that is where your true awakening begins. Not with knowing exactly why Jay entered your life, not with predicting what will happen next, but with realizing that whatever the reason was, you are no longer the same person you were before the encounter. You have seen more clearly. You have felt more deeply. You have questioned more honestly. You have grown more consciously. And now you are ready to continue. Chosen one, carry the lesson. Release the fear, protect your peace, honor your heart, and keep moving toward the life that is waiting for you. Whatever J ultimately represents, let the experience remind you of one undeniable truth: your story is still unfolding. Your heart is still becoming wiser, and the person you are destined to spend your entire life with, yourself, is finally learning how to stand beside you without abandoning you. And as you step forward from this moment, remember that the deepest transformation does not happen when someone enters your life. It happens when you finally understand who you are after they have entered it. That is the awakening. That is the lesson. That is the gift. And that is where you begin again.